welcome to the 495. I am your host, editor-in-chief of Merrimack Valley Magazine, Doug Sparks. Lou, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing very well. I'm celebrating your negative results.
Or my daughter's negative results from COVID test. She was sick and very sick, 2 nights ago, and we were pretty concerned. And when they're young, you get very scared, right? Because it just feels like they can kind of plummet, and it's just a different feeling than if I had a cold. And everybody's like,
It looked like you posted some pictures, a black and white set of pictures of the kids. It looked like Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Not from the way she looked, but it looked like you guys had a siege just with the two girls and being confined.
It does feel like a siege sometimes, for sure. But they've been, this is tough for them, but they don't have, any way of thinking beyond it.
Right.
So like I took the older.
They don't know what they're missing.
Yeah, I took my older daughter, who's almost 4, into downtown Lowell, and we just walked around. And you've never seen a child so fascinated by fire hydrants. You know what I mean? Like just these little things are suddenly so interesting to them that normally would be nothing. And forget it, when the postman comes to the door, this is this huge deal. Like if the house erupts, and they have to run out and talk about the mail, and it's a different sense of.
Well, see, this is the thing of parenting, though, Doug. You refine things. You refine this R and this interest and excitement.
Well, that's this is part of the lesson for me. Is being able to look at these things that normally I wouldn't pay that much attention to and find some new dimension to them, and that's absolutely great. At the same time, I still feel bad because I know that this is coming from this place of like. They are just locked. They're locked inside this shoebox all the time, and they're just dying. They're just scratching to get out. An experienced world. But, in case anybody's worried right now, my younger daughter is feeling great. She's a little bit sniffly. We had her do a COVID test. I was in quarantine until this morning. That came back negative, so I'm here in the studio. And it was also good because I got to pick up proofs of the latest issue of Merrimack Valley Magazine, which is coming out in March.
Nice.
We didn't know what to do because if I was in quarantine, how am I going to proofread the documents? I hate proofing digitally. I hate it, and my eyes just don't scan that way.
You don't proofread digitally?
No, paper.
Oh,
you got to print it out.
Really?
You got to print it out. You see things in paper that you don't see. And also, I see it all digitally all the time. Mm-hmm. So your eyes kind of follow this pattern, right? And if there's two thes next to each other and it's like a type error, you just skip over it every single time. As soon as it's on the printed page, there's a type error right there. You see it.
And my problem is I write them, and then they want me to proof them. And it's like I wrote the two thes, so I know what I meant when I go through it. I'm just going to skip over it a second time.
There's tricks, and you learn, and it's not just me. We have other people proof, But in this particular case, it's like, well, how was I going to handle the physical documents if I was in quarantine? Fortunately, I didn't have to worry about that, and I went by and picked up a copy. And then
Glenn would take a ride out and drop them off.
Everyone's very helpful. They were all willing to drop them off and figure something out. But it was easiest to do this way, and to come up and grab the physical, the physical proofs. Coincidentally, the cover story. Nobody knows this. You're hearing this for the first time. The cover story is on Southeast Asian cuisine. And we wrote a primer on Southeast Asian cuisine. So if you're interested in the topic that we're going to get into today, check it out. And it's written specifically for people who are maybe new to this. Maybe they haven't had Thai food or Vietnamese food or Cambodian food, and they want to get out there and see what's available because this is such a great area for this very, very diverse, varied cuisine. So if you're the sort of person that's like, I've always wanted to try some Laotian food, I don't know where to begin. Now we have this primer and we can start you off. I mention this because our guest today is the owner of a new Thai restaurant. It's more complicated than that, called The Joy Nest in Newburyport. Her name is Caroline Jolliffe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi.
Hey, how are you doing? So you just opened this weekend. This was your like opening for Valentine's Day.
On Valentine's Day, we thought it would be a fitting day to present ourselves to the world.
Yeah. Now, I've seen these cooking shows where they do this thing where they set everybody up for like the most chaotic experience so that it makes good for good reality TV. And I imagine it a little bit like that, right? Because if you open on Valentine's Day, there's no like, we'll just ease into this. We'll figure things out as we go along.
Trial by fire. But we were ready. We were so primed for this moment. We've been working on it for about a year, since February of 2020. And it just, of course, has taken its time, because everything has taken its time this past year. But we just figured we were ready, and it was a little less chaotic than we thought it would be, maybe because we were so prepared. Sorry about the phone.
Yeah. If you need to take that, go ahead. Just joking.
No, someone else could take that.
Yeah. So, so what is Joy Nest? Tell us about it, because it's a unique concept.
It is. Well, so I'll backtrack a little bit. I'm also the owner of Brown Sugar by the Sea, and I'd often gazed across the street to that restaurant at 50 Water, which has been 3 transformations since we've been at Brown Sugar. And I've always been a little curious about it, but it never, I don't know, nothing ever stuck, obviously. Some people feel like it's a little bit cursed, but I always felt like there was so much potential there. And the last tenant was Glenn's, as you may be familiar with. And even on the busiest days, I couldn't tell what was going on in there. It seemed a little mysterious and dark. So when it became available about a year ago, I just talked to my landlord, which happens to be the same one as we have at Brown Sugar, Dave Hall. And I said, what's going on over there? Is it, have you leased it out to anybody yet? And this was just pre-pandemic, really. And he said, no, are you interested? So I didn't know I was interested at the time, but I knew that I wanted to try to create something that harkens back to a more joyful time. And even before the pandemic, I feel like we were in a little bit of a cultural lull. Everyone was a little melancholy, I feel. And so I knew instantly that I wanted to try to do something with a speakeasy kind of vibe that harkens back to the 20s, with a lot of visual delighters and a lot of surprises and just the vibe of happiness. So then I also had to consider the cuisine, and I went to something I know, which is Thai food, obviously, but I wanted something not the same as Brown Sugar, which is, to me, Thai comfort food. If you want pad Thai, masaman curry, those yummy things, you go to Brown Sugar. This, I wanted to explore the street food side of Thai food, which is a little on the edge. If you've ever been to Bangkok, you might know what I mean. It's a little more adventuresome.
Yeah, like, so what, for those of us who haven't been to Bangkok, what are some signature dishes? What are the sort of things that you expect at Joy Nest or street vendors in Bangkok?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. Oh, there's so much. The one thing about living in Bangkok that I miss, which it's been a long time, but it never has changed, that the fact that you can go out any time of day or night and find a food vendor. And they usually are one vendor so good at one particular thing, like radna noodles, for example. And they make it all day long, night long. And that's, if you want that, you go there. If you want some tom salad or something, you go to another vendor. If you want gluikak or something like fried bananas, you would go to another vendor. So what we're trying to do at Joy Nest is pick the things that are still accessible to American palates, like mu ping, for example. That's it's simple. It's just a marinated pork on a skewer, but it's the most delicious thing, and it's very casual. When you go to a street vendor, obviously you don't sit down in a very formal setting. You're just grabbing something and literally eating it on the street in the most kind of weird situations. The restaurants there, the ambiance is never a thing. It's always about the food itself. So you go there, it might be little, cafe tables with barely any napkins and this pollution all around, and and noise and motorcycles, but you're just having this most delicious thing. So that's what I'm trying to represent, that side of Thai cuisine.
You went to school for English literature, right? And of course, I'm interested in this because I'm a writer. I'm an English guy. So you have a master's degree in English literature, right?
I do.
Were you interested in the Jazz Age writers? Is that part of this? Were you reading Fitzgerald and Great Gatsby? And
I certainly did. I don't know. No, I was a Jane Austen fan.
Okay.
I wrote my thesis on. But so there's no real connection there. But I think, appreciate the finer things, I suppose. And when you're a reader and a writer, you pick up on very fine details. And I suppose that's something that I cultivated through studying English. It's not the most practical degree, but it certainly taught me to open my eyes.
Well, it's practical if you become a magazine editor. But I'm sure people hear that and they think, okay, what's the path? What's the path then from being focused on Jane Austen, reading the 19th century British novelists, to owning a speakeasy in Newburyport?
Well, right. It's a very crooked path, and I think everyone travels kind of a crooked path. And well, yeah, no direct connection, but just I think one thing is that it taught me to be curious and open-minded, and that leads to a lot of different directions. And in this case, it led this way.
Okay. And now what about the connection between the food and the ambience? What's the relationship between Thai food and jazz music and this kind of sexy, fun cocktail, like a little bit hidden atmosphere?
Well, I like to think there isn't, and that's why it makes it so interesting. I like that there is a dichotomy going on of something very upscale and something very swanky, but serving something very earthy and accessible. I just like that combination of things.
You're going to have live jazz music at some point?
Yes.
I assume you don't now, correct?
No, the guidelines prevent us from doing so as of now.
Do you have any sense of when that's going to happen?
I would hope next month, but I don't know. I actually spoke with somebody from the city, and they weren't able to give me one day or another.
Sure. Are you booking musicians? Are you speaking with musicians yet, or is that something you kind of have to hold off on until you know more?
I know quite a few musicians because we did offer live music for years at Brown Sugar, and I know a lot of talented local artists. So I'm sure, and I've connected with them. I'm sure that once that restriction is lifted, we'll be totally ready to do that.
Yeah, the visual marketing aspects, and I'm speaking particularly about your social media. Is that coming from you? Is that your vision, or are there people involved who are kind of pushing that and forming that vision? Because it's very particular, and we'll talk about it a little bit.
It is. Well, I would say it came from my original vision, but I knew back in 2020 that I needed somebody with expertise in brand identity. So I did hire Favor the Brave, and Kelly Stromsky heads up that office in Newburyport. So she helped me nail it down. I think I had a very kind of amorphous view of what I wanted to do, but she asked the right questions to bring me back to this point where I am right now, with a lot of color, a lot of vibrance, a lot of, like I said before, visual delighters. I think that everything about the Joy Nest will be interesting in terms of everything, in terms of the colors, in terms of the textual, furry. I don't know if you've seen the images of the furry seat covers and the velvet, and it translates to even the table decor, the gold flatware and the flowers and the birds. Birds is another thing that she brought out of the brand clarity form. When you talk to someone who's helping you determine your brand, one of their questions is, if your business were an animal, what would it be? And I thought, that's a really good question. And the answer that came to mind was a peacock. And that's where the bird part of, I guess it was in the back of my mind already, but that's when that part just sort of exploded into this.
So what came first, the name of the restaurant or the bird imagery?
The bird image, and shortly after, we tried to join those two things. The I don't know, the fact that I wanted to have something where people could be happy, and also somewhere where people could be cozy And then the nest sort of just made sense.
Yeah. So I encourage everyone to check out your social media, check out the Instagram, because it's great. It's just great photography. It's a lot of fun just to look at, and it makes me want to go check it out for sure. It looks very inviting. But there's a lot of like you said, color and dynamism, and you get a sense of all these details. But there's also a political component, and it seems that you're not you tell me if I'm onto something. It seems you're not shy about kind of weighing in on the issues of the day. Where does that come from?
Oh, I think it comes from a lot of thinking about where we are culturally, where we are societally. Politics kind of gets into it. Yes, I try not to engage myself too heavily with that, but I do feel like we're coming out of a dark period and we need a little brightness. And as far as the images, the inclusive images, if that's what you're getting at of everyone that is on my social media, yeah, I just feel like that's part of life. And I don't know if I would say it's particularly political, but I'm interested to hear you say that.
Well, maybe I'm oversensitive, or maybe we're kind of coming out of this period of divisiveness where everything is politicized, and and there's part of me, for our magazine, we try to be like neutral as much as we can. And I know that there are business owners who aren't afraid to weigh in on political issues of all types. We were talking about Scott Plath before the show from Moonstones and Cobblestones and Snow Social. And he is not shy when he gets on his Facebook page. And even if it ends up kind of offending people or driving certain people away, he doesn't really, it doesn't seem to bother him. But I wonder, like, do you worry? Do you worry about, like, wading into those waters that you're going to drive some people away or cause division? Or is that something that like attracts people where they're like, finally someone's able to, say something about this, and they're not trying to hide what they think?
I think it is attractive to people. I do feel like we're getting into the point where everyone can just be open and be inclusive in every sense, and not be too careful, but also be sensitive. I think there's a lot going on, I suppose. I think in the end, of course, I like to believe that we're all humans and that we all have connections in every sense.
Yeah.
So that's something that actually appealed to me about developing the menu and the decor and the price points of the Joy Nest. I wanted it to be a place where it could accommodate people of every kind and not make it something, that excludes people that maybe can't go out to eat very often. There's something for everyone. And that's something I pride myself on. So
for people who are listening now and, it's almost lunchtime or it's lunchtime, they're starting to salivate a little bit and, they're in, how do you have to make reservations? What are your hours? How do people come check out the Joy Nest right now?
I do recommend reservations because we're still at the 40% capacity. So it did fill up last night. We were able to take some walk-ins, but it's recommended that you go to our website and there's a little reservations button and you can easily get in. And the hours, we're at normal hours. So we do take a break every day from 3 to 5 to let everyone kind of regroup for dinner. But other than that, we're open from 12 to 3 and then 5 to 10 most nights, and Saturday 5 to 11.
I didn't get a chance to take a look at the cocktail menu, but is there a signature drink? And talk a little bit about the cocktails and what we can expect for those of us who want to go out and enjoy ourselves in the evenings.
Well, being sort of the speakeasy genre, I would say we're pretty gin forward in terms of the selection, but I would say one of the heavy hitters has been a drink that has a bourbon base. So there's something for everybody. And we have an excellent bartender, Christian, who has taken this role of, when you meet him, you'll know. He wears a 3-piece suit and a cap, and he has a curly mustache under the mask, of course. But he's extraordinary, and I think you'll really enjoy his energy behind the bar.
The bourbon drink, do you know what it's called? Do you remember the name?
The Swallow Learns to Swing.
Ah, And who's
all the drinks have bird references as well.
Okay. And is this a team effort? Do you come down and you try a bunch of different things? Is it being kind of guided by Christian? You said the bartender's name is. Like, where do the ideas come from on that side of the menu?
So before I was able to find Christian, I had to design the menu myself. So the drinks are of my sort of guidance, and I tweaked them a little bit once he was on board. But the drink names, I knew I had to do something silly with bird names, so that was my idea, and I did work with Kelsey's team to kind of hone those names a little bit more clear. But yeah, there's something for everyone, and I think you'll have a lot of fun exploring that side of the menu.
If I stop by this week, is there a particular dish on the menu that I must try?
One that is overlooked because it doesn't look like anything is the miso udon, but that to me is the most delicious thing to have on a cold day. So that one I would highly recommend. And if you're looking for...
Oh,
yeah,
froze up. We'll give her a minute.
Frozen up, yep. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, you froze up there for just a second. But the miso sounds good. Are you going to have seasonal menus?
Oh, yes, definitely. Once we get this basic menu nailed down, we plan to expand possibly into the sushi realm at some point.
Any other plans for expansion beyond this? I mean, this is a sort of mini Thai food empire. Are we going to start to see your brand elsewhere in the Merrimack Valley?
I'm a firm believer in one thing at a time. So I want to make this wonderful and perfect as well as I can. And then we'll see what goes next on the path.
Before I turn this over to Lou, because I know he has a few questions, what's the experience been like of doing this during COVID? Because I know it can be a nightmare opening a restaurant in the best of times. Right? Mm-hmm. I've read the book. I've read Anthony Bourdain. I know what can happen. I know how bad it can be. And it's like the deck is stacked against you, right? It's like, what could it be a worse time?
True.
But what's your experience? Well, how are you managing that, and what are you seeing?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of hope on the horizon. That's something that I've focused on this whole time, was realizing that once we get out of this period, it's going to be like another roaring 20s. So that I've kept my eye on. But getting through this year, it was interesting. At Brown Sugar in particular, takeout became a thing, and it was very intense work. It was fast-paced rather, and we had to siphon all our business through one area instead of the dine-in. So it changed how hard we were all working for the same result. For building this business, though, I have to say that because we've been in a kind of slower pace in general, that it has given me an opportunity to think really hard about the details. So I never felt the pressure to open as quickly as I could, because I knew I couldn't. For one thing, it wouldn't be the right time. It would be too dangerous. I wouldn't be able to find staff. Everyone was kind of hunkering down rather. So I've often said that I think COVID kind of gave me a gift in a sense. I know it's been terrible in many, many ways, but one thing that it did was allow me time to explore and make this the best that I could.
Lou, do you have any questions for Caroline?
Yeah, I want to continue along that line, Caroline, because COVID was obviously a challenge in this time, the startup for the Joy Nest, but also Newburyport itself is a challenge. And you're one of 3 restaurants that will have open during COVID, all established restaurateurs who could go in with a formula and probably succeed and have the resources and the skills to do it. But with the Joy Nest, you took a left turn. I mean, this is it seems to me from the outside, a very non-traditional restaurant, which makes it so much more risky in my eyes. It seems kind of brave that I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to open another restaurant in Newburyport. I'm going to open it across the street, and I'm going to do this with it and let people adjust as they will. Talk about it. I consider it brave. What did you consider it?
I got that comment a lot from customers that have become friends of mine. That they will say, "Oh, you're so brave," and I would laugh, obviously, and say, "Well, either it's brave or it's foolish. I have yet to know that." But it does. It also feels very fresh. I don't know. One of the comments that I've gotten over the last few days of being open was, "Thank you for bringing this to Newburyport, and thank you for creating something that's different from the rest. We need this. Newburyport needs this. We need something a little bit different and off the beaten path." So that's something I hope I can provide.
Yeah, and you're dealing with the winter crowd in Newburyport, which are mostly natives and certainly people in the area. And we're all foodies, and we all love downtown Newburyport and the restaurant part of it. So yeah, I'm looking towards it, very encouraged, because yeah, we need something different. We need something, an experience down there, because you can walk in that particular area. You can walk to a dozen restaurants. But to find that place, that different, that comfort place, and we were talking before the show, COVID has robbed this from us. We've got a lot of plexiglass. We can't sit at the bar. We can't talk with people. We can't just go out for a drink. And that seems to be exactly what you're offering. And I'm guessing everyone is just really gassed to get into that comfort zone and have a good place to sit and just talk with people.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I feel that as well. I'm happy to be here. When people come in, the missing piece from this whole year of preparing was the energy of people. So that first day that we were open, I could feel it. It was amazing. We had the fireplaces lit and everyone was smiling, and there wasn't a bad vibe in the building. It was wonderful. And I think we can keep that going because we're all happy to be here and extremely grateful. I want to add that because it has been a challenging year for everybody and especially for the restaurants. But the fact that I can do this and I do feel the support of the community feels like a huge blessing, and I can't be more thankful.
You said your bar selections were gin forward, as it would be with a speakeasy, but a little birdie told me, I was warned, pretty good bourbon selection too, and I'm a bourbon guy, so 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 you have a good bourbon selection too for those of us who, because for me bourbon is like craft beer to me. I just like trying things, and I'm not going to go out and buy $100 bottle of bourbon, but I'll go sit at a bar and take a shot of it and try it out.
Yes. Yep. I think that, yeah, it lends itself to the space as well. It's a warm place to be, and yeah, good selection. And we're going to grow that. This is just a starting point. We've done quite a lot with the space that we have, but you can expect much, much more in the months to come as we grow.
Tell us a little bit about the upstairs, because it's so foreign to us, and it appears to me from the marketing and from what I've seen, it appears to me very much like a lounge, very much like a speakeasy, and that's just not the kind of environment we're used to having anymore. Is that it, or how do the protocols have it worked into the second floor and the lounge part of it?
How have the protocols worked? Well,
Yeah.
it's not mainly in terms of space. So there's plenty of space, and my designer, I need to shout out to her because she's been amazing. Lauren Santoro of Blue Lamb Design Group. She is a friend and an artist, an amazing artist. And I want to speak to that as well before we depart. She created a space with a lot of velvet couches, and strangely enough, we found most of these pieces from Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. They're all pieces from somebody's grandmother's home. You'll see these velvet high back chairs that are mustard yellow and green velvet couches, and a red what is it, a fainting couch that we found with a carved bird on the side. It was like the universe was giving us these amazing pieces. She pulled them together. We commissioned a lot of art from local artists. Alan Bull, for example, you might be familiar with him. He painted a piece of a woman in a backless dress sitting on a velvet couch, which we have just to the left of the upstairs bar. Ryan Kelly is another local artist you might be familiar with. He works with wire.
Yep.
He designed a Picasso piece from wire, which is amazing, among other pieces that I hope people will come and see.
as this pandemic fades into the history books, which it will at some point. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but it will. One of the things we anticipate is that everyone's going to need a new wardrobe and that people are going to want to buy a lot of clothes. There's probably a lot of people just ready to get new outfits. What did you see in terms of fashion this weekend? Where people was there a lot of color? Was there a lot of elegance? What were you seeing in the room?
Yes, in fact, something that I picked up right away, that people were, yes, they were dressed to the nines. I assume partly because it was Valentine's Day, but I think they saw the images on social media and got that cue that, oh, that's a place where you don't necessarily wear jeans, which is not what I had intended. I want everyone to be able to walk in, but everyone came in looking extremely elegant. It was wonderful. It was really, really wonderful to see.
You will have your finger on the pulse. You will see all the trends first right there, because it seems to invite that, right? It seems to invite that kind of like, there's this feel. I want to be a part of that feel. I want to dress up and be, the space is elegant. I want to, look pretty good and sharpen up, and invites that kind of fun, which people are going to be really, really hungry for.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all attention to detail. I think that, yes.
Well, I am looking forward to visiting. I will take note that I should make reservations. Our guest this week has been Caroline Jolliffe, who is the owner of the just opened, the Joy Nest in Newburyport. Caroline, thank you so much for coming on the 495. I really appreciate it.
I have had a wonderful time. Thanks so much for asking.
Absolutely. I look forward to stopping by.
Yes, thank you. Take care.
Take care. All right, Lou.
See you next week.
See you next week. Thank you very much.